On April 12, 2026, Health Canada quietly changed one of the biggest cosmetic loopholes in this country. For decades, every sunscreen sold in Canada was allowed to hide hundreds of chemicals behind a single word on the label: parfum. One word, up to 3,000 chemicals, no disclosure required. That ended 38 days ago. But here's what nobody is telling you. We checked the bottles still sitting on Canadian shelves last week. Most brands aren't ready, some still aren't compliant, and the brands you trust the most are hiding the most. An independent lab tested 294 batches of sunscreen and found a known carcinogen in 78 of them. A Canadian dermatologist created the most iconic sunscreen this country has ever known. A French multinational bought her work in 1997, and the bottles your kids use this summer may contain chemicals Health Canada classified as toxic just months ago. 7 brands exposed. 3 brands worth every penny. And that French acquisition story? It's coming at brand number 2. Don't skip ahead. This is the True North shelf, where the labels get read so the truth gets told. Let's dive in. Before getting into the brands, 2 things every Canadian buying sunscreen this summer needs to understand. First, there are 2 kinds of sunscreen. Mineral sunscreens use zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. They sit on top of the skin and physically block UV rays. Chemical sunscreens use ingredients like oxybenzone, octinoxate, octocrylene, and avobenzone. These soak into the skin and absorb radiation. Hawaii banned the chemical ones in 2021. Health Canada is reviewing 6 of them right now. Second, SPF on the label only measures protection from UVB rays, the ones that burn you. The rays that cause skin cancer and aging are UVA, different rays, different filter required. If the bottle doesn't say broad spectrum, you're not actually protected from the worst of it. Keep both of those points in mind, because the brands on this list have been exploiting Canadian consumer confusion about both of them for years. Brand number 1, and this one sets the bar low for what not to buy. Banana Boat sits on virtually every Canadian drugstore shelf. Shoppers Drug Mart, Walmart, London Drugs, Pharmaprix. It's cheap, it's familiar, it's everywhere. And in July of 2022, the company that owns Banana Boat, Edgewell Personal Care, issued a recall on its hair and scalp sunscreen spray. The reason? Benzene. Not a contamination from a single batch. Not a one-time accident. Edgewell's own internal testing detected benzene in 3 production lots. By January 2023, the recall had been expanded to additional lots. Benzene is not a complicated chemical. It's classified by Health Canada as a Group 1 human carcinogen. That means it's known, confirmed, to cause cancer in humans, specifically leukemia and other blood cancers. There is no safe level of benzene exposure recognized by health authorities anywhere in the world. And here's the part that should bother every Canadian parent who has ever sprayed sunscreen on a child's head at the cottage. The contamination wasn't in the active ingredient, it was in the propellant, the butane and isobutane gas used to push the spray out of the can. That means the chemistry of any spray sunscreen, by design, risks this exact same contamination. Banana Boat didn't fix a defect, they proved the entire spray category is broken. But brand number 2 is where this gets personal, because that brand was built right here, by a Canadian, and then it was sold to the French. Brand number 2, and this one is personal, because Ombrelle is Canadian. The brand was launched in 1990 in a Quebec laboratory. The formulation was developed by a Canadian dermatologist who had spent years studying how to protect Canadian families from both UVA and UVB radiation at the same time. At the time, no other product in the world could do that. Ombrelle was the first. It was a Canadian first. Within 7 years, it had become the second best-selling sunscreen brand in this country. A Canadian dermatologist's work, sold by a small Canadian company called Dermtech Pharmaceuticals, out of Quebec. Then, in 1997, L'Oréal showed up with a check. L'Oréal Group acquired Ombrelle from Dermtech in October of that year. And from that moment forward, every Canadian who reached for an Ombrelle bottle at Shoppers Drug Mart wasn't supporting a Canadian dermatologist's company anymore. They were funding a French multinational that has been fined repeatedly by European regulators for chemical safety violations. L'Oréal owns Garnier. Garnier owns Ombrelle today. And L'Oréal Group was fined 189 million euros by European Union competition regulators in 2007-8 for participating in a price-fixing cartel involving cosmetics. Ombrelle still markets itself as the Canadian sunscreen. The bottles still carry the Quebec heritage, but the company that owns it, that decides what goes inside, that sets the prices on the shelves, that company hasn't been Canadian for almost 30 years. And under Health Canada's new fragrance disclosure rules that took effect last month, Ombrell's fragrance lines are now legally required to list dozens of allergens the brand spent decades not mentioning. When a Canadian institution gets sold to a foreign giant with a regulatory record, that's not heritage anymore, that's branding. This next brand markets itself as the dermatologist's recommended choice. That part is actually true, but what's in the bottle isn't what those dermatologists are recommending. Brand number 3 is Neutrogena, the wild caught claim of the sunscreen world. The dermatologist recommended badge is real. American dermatologists do recommend Neutrogena, so do Canadian ones. The brand has reach, recognition, and an entire research wing. That part isn't marketing, that part is true. But here's the part those dermatologists don't put in the recommendation. In July 2021, Johnson & Johnson, the parent company of Neutrogena, voluntarily recalled 5 separate Neutrogena aerosol sunscreen products: Beach Defense Aerosol, Cool Dry Sport Aerosol, Invisible Daily Defense Aerosol, Ultra Sheer Aerosol, and another product from the Aveeno line, which we'll get to next. The reason for the recall? Internal testing confirmed benzene contamination, the same Group 1 human carcinogen that triggered the banana boat recall a year later. By March 2022, a Neutrogena and Aveeno sunscreen class action lawsuit had been settled, with the company agreeing to provide full cash refunds to Canadians and Americans who had purchased recalled aerosol products, plus up to $1.75 million in vouchers for the lotion lines that hadn't been recalled. Johnson & Johnson's public statement to CBS News, quote, "Benzene is not an ingredient in any of our personal care products," unquote. Technically accurate, practically misleading, the contamination doesn't have to be intentional to end up on the skin of a Canadian child, and the parent company has been making headlines for very different reasons. Brand number 4 is Aveeno, marketed as the sensitive skin choice, the natural oat-based gentle option, the one your grandmother trusted, the one pediatricians put on baby skin. Same parent company, Johnson & Johnson. Aveeno was part of the same 2021 aerosol sunscreen recall. Same benzene contamination, same class action settlement, same corporate statement. But Aveeno carries something heavier than benzene. It carries the weight of what its parent company has been settling for years. In June 2023, Johnson & Johnson agreed to an $8.9 billion settlement involving 60,000 plaintiffs in talc-related cancer litigation. 60,000. The product? Johnson's baby powder. The allegation? That the company knew talc could be contaminated with asbestos and continued selling it for decades. Now, honest disclosure. Talc is in baby powder, not sunscreen. The lawsuit didn't involve Aveeno sunscreen directly. We are not claiming Aveeno sunscreen contains asbestos. But that settlement tells you what this company prioritizes when it thinks nobody is watching. $8.9 billion is what it costs to settle decades of choices made by the same corporate decision makers who set the standards for Aveeno's formulations today. And under Health Canada's new fragrance disclosure rules, several Aveeno sunscreen products are now flagged for incomplete labeling compliance. If this is useful to you, please subscribe and hit that like button. The algorithm only shows this kind of investigation to Canadians when enough of you tell it to. The next 3 brands, you almost certainly have one of them in your beach bag right now. Brand number 5 is Coppertone. You know this one, the little blonde girl pulling the dog's mouth open. The advertising image that built an entire generation's trust. Coppertone was not in the original Valley Shore benzene report in 2021. The brand was not exposed by independent testing. It was exposed by itself. In late 2021, Coppertone's own internal product testing detected unacceptable benzene levels in Coppertone Sport Spray SPF 50. 5 separate production lots. The company didn't wait to be called out by a regulator. It recalled the lots itself. That sounds responsible. And it was. But here's the question every Canadian deserves to ask. If Coppertone's own testing found benzene in 5 production lots of a single product line, how often is similar testing happening on the other 40 products in the Coppertone catalog? And how many lots are being tested per batch? And what happens to the lots where contamination falls between the company's internal threshold and the FDA's 2 parts per million limit? In September 2022, Coppertone agreed to a $2.3 million class action settlement related to the benzene exposure. A company that catches its own contamination is more trustworthy than one that doesn't. A company that needs to keep catching its own contamination is selling you a process problem. Brand number 6 is Hawaiian Tropic. If you've ever opened a bottle of Hawaiian Tropic, you know exactly what we're talking about. That coconut and cocoa butter smell, the vacation in a bottle. The reason people buy it, that smell isn't sunscreen. That smell is the loophole Health Canada just closed 38 days ago. Until April 12, 2026, the word parfum on a Hawaiian Tropic label could hide up to 3,000 individual chemicals. No disclosure required. Manufacturers argued the formulations were proprietary trade secrets. Health Canada agreed. For decades. That ended. Under the new fragrance allergen disclosure regulations, 24 specific chemicals known to trigger allergic reactions, endocrine disruption, or respiratory illness must now appear by name on every cosmetic sold in Canada when present above threshold concentrations. By August 1st of 2026, that list expands to 81. Hawaiian Tropic sunscreens were among the most heavily fragranced products on the Canadian market. People didn't buy them to block UV rays. They bought them because they smelled like a beach. Those buyers were not protecting themselves from cancer. They were buying perfume with SPF. And the perfume contained allergens, and the bottle wasn't required to tell them. Now it is. And those bottles, the ones already on the shelf, were manufactured before the rules took effect. They're being sold anyway. Brand number 7 is Costco's Kirkland Signature Sunblock. Costco built its reputation on private label value. Save money. Trust the warehouse. Trust the bulk pricing. For most categories, the strategy works. Sunscreen is not most categories. Kirkland Signature products are not manufactured by Costco. They are contract packed. That means Costco identifies a category, finds a third-party manufacturer willing to produce a private label version at a price point Costco can mark up, and slaps the Kirkland brand on the bottle. Different products, different manufacturers, sometimes the same factory that makes the name brand on the shelf next to it, sometimes a completely different facility. Costco rarely publishes the manufacturer. Costco never publishes the contract. Costco does not require third-party benzene testing to be made public. When the parent company has not been pulled into the Valisure findings, the Edgewell recalls, the Johnson & Johnson settlement, or the Copperton class action, that doesn't necessarily mean the product is safer. It might just mean the product hasn't been independently tested. When you can't trace who made it, you can't tell what's in it. 7 brands, recalls in cascade, a French acquisition, corporate settlements in the billions, a category-wide fragrance loophole on the private label that won't disclose its own supplier. That's Canadian sunscreen in 2026. But sunscreens, done right, are one of the most important health products in any Canadian medicine cabinet. The Canadian Cancer Society reports that 1 in 3 Canadians will develop skin cancer in their lifetime. The problem isn't sunscreen. The problem is what certain brands do to it before it reaches the shelf. Here are 3 brands that get it right. Hero number 1, Badger Balm. Founded in 1995 in a small workshop in New Hampshire by a carpenter named Bill White. Started by accident after Bill made a hand balm to protect his own cracked carpenter's hands in the New England winter. 28 years later, Badger is one of the most consistently top-rated sunscreens in independent testing. The reason is the formulation. Mineral filter only. Zinc oxide. No oxybenzone, no octinoxate, no avobenzone, no chemical UV absorbers of any kind. The ingredient list on the Badger Active Mineral Sunscreen runs 4 ingredients long. 4. EWG verified. Certified organic. Cruelty-free. Family-owned. B Corp. Badger's products are available across Canada through well.ca, Healthy Planet, and most independent natural health stores. It's not the cheapest sunscreen on the shelf. A 4-ounce tube runs around $20 Canadian. For a product that goes on a child's skin every day of the summer, that's not expensive. That's the price of not having to second guess what's in the bottle. Hero number 2, Attitude, made in Montreal. Founded in 2007 by a small team of chemists who had grown frustrated with the gap between what Canadian families wanted from natural products and what the market was actually offering. Attitude's sunscreen line is mineral-based, EWG verified, vegan, and Leaping Bunny certified for absolute zero animal testing. But the part that matters most is what's not in it. No oxybenzone, no octinoxate, no octocrylene, no avobenzone, no fragrance, no parabens, no phthalates, no SLES, no PEG compounds. Attitude sunscreen formulations were already compliant with Health Canada's new fragrance allergen disclosure rules years before those rules took effect. The brand didn't need to scramble to relabel, it didn't need to reformulate, it already labeled everything. Quebec made. Sold across Canada at Whole Foods, Pharmaprix, and online through Amazon Canada and the company's own website. For Canadians who want a sunscreen that does what the label says, without the chemistry class footnotes, this is the brand. And hero number 3. This one is for Canadians who want to keep their money in Canada. Green Beaver. Founded in 2002 in Hawkesbury, Ontario, by Karen Clark and her husband Alain Ménard, both pharmaceutical chemists, both Canadian. They started Green Beaver after realizing they could not find a single natural skincare line in Canada that met their own scientific standards. So they made one. The Green Beaver sunscreen line is 100% natural, mineral-based, made in Canada from start to finish, vegan, gluten-free, free of every ingredient on the David Suzuki Foundation Dirty Dozen list. That's not a marketing claim, that's a chemistry decision. Green Beaver products are available at Pharmaprix, Healthy Planet, Whole Foods Canada, and most independent health food stores from St. John's to Vancouver. It's not the most exciting bottle on the shelf. It doesn't smell like a tropical beach. It doesn't have a colorful surfboard on the packaging. But it's honest, it's accessible, it's Canadian made by Canadian chemists, and it doesn't play games with what's inside. 3 brands, the simplest decisions on this list. Sunscreen should be one of the simplest health decisions any Canadian family makes. Zinc, mineral, a barrier between skin and sun. But somewhere between the laboratory and the drugstore shelf, certain brands found ways to complicate that. Cheaper chemical filters, hidden carcinogens, corporate cover-ups, a fragrance loophole that hid 3,000 chemicals behind a single word. 3 questions to ask before any sunscreen goes into your cart this summer. Is it mineral-based or chemical? Does the bottle list every fragrance allergen by name, the way Health Canada now requires? And is the manufacturer Canadian, or at least transparent about who actually makes it? If the label can't answer all 3, put it back. This is the True North Shelf. Stay safe, stay educated. Thanks for watching.